Our County Commissioners segment this month features two of the three. Mm-hmm. Commissioner Sherene Hess is with us, and Commissioner Ruddock. Good morning to both of you.
Morning, Todd. How are you this morning?
Wonderful. It's good to have you with us today. Who's leading off today?
Well, it depends on what your first question is,
okay.
I guess.
Well, my first question to this panel was always, what's going on? So there you go. Whichever one of you wants to lead it off.
I'll kick it off a little bit here, and there's a few things I'm sure Sherene want to talk about as well. I traveled to Capitol in Harrisburg on January 29th, representing the county commissioners here in Indiana, of course, and also the county commissioners in Pennsylvania to meet with a delegation of senators and representatives to talk about some of the priorities for counties in Pennsylvania this year. Mm-hmm. And it was really just an open dialogue kind of thing. We didn't do any kind of platform or issues, just simply to hear some of the thoughts that the team of legislatures have in terms of what they think we should be looking at collectively and working as a team. And the two things, there were actually about three things that came up in the discussion. I think election reform is one that took a priority of discussion, actually, and maybe Sherene can talk about that as well. Mm-hmm. And then the second item was on property tax, okay, which we are very pleased that it's still at the top of their list, certainly on the top of our list and the top of my list. We've been working those issues since through the tax reassessment here in Indiana County to find a better way of doing business in counties, particularly when property tax has been the focus of revenue streams for counties, and it has to be adjusted in fairness to the people who live here and own property and homes in Indiana County. So we're going to be working with them. I know Senator Yaw was very, very outspoken about making a change in that process. So I think we have a lot of support at the legislative level to move that process forward, and we'll continue to drive that forward as best we can. So.
Probably a lot of people are unaware of what funding streams are available to counties, and that's it, really, isn't it?
It's the only one. And in fact, we have requested on multiple occasions to the legislature to give us the opportunity to have an open playing field as to other methods of raising taxation. Mm-hmm. The income tax is certainly an opportunity. Increasing the sales tax is also an option. And we would like counties to have the flexibility to decide what their makeup should look like to reduce that burden of property tax on our taxpayers.
Yeah, one of the great issues for any county is funding all of the services not only that are mandated, but that you wish to do as well, that you have identified as real needs within your county. And if you only have one stream available to you, well, then the adjustments that you have to make is basically going to be raise taxes or take from here and give to there, and then you create a need in another area when that happens.
Well, you do shift, but I think that the more people we have spoken to in the county would like to see some sort of a fairness built into that shifting process, because of the emphasis on, particularly on property taxes when it comes to school real estate taxes. It's very, very high. And we have to find a way to reduce that burden of cost. Yeah,
we continue to hear that in Harrisburg, that's one of the real priorities is finding a fix to the property tax problem. But maybe we don't realize that it's not just schools, but counties are involved in that as well.
Yeah, well, that's exactly what the discussion was about. It was very open and honest. I think there'll be a lot of work being done at that level, particularly the counties aren't going to back off of that. We have made that a high priority for the last two election cycles, and I was able to be part of that process and sat on the election or the property tax review team. I've spent some time on the government action team actually to look at ways to improve the process of reassessment as well that would affect counties as we move forward. And so they have already made some changes based upon our input, and I was pleased to be part of that. And a few bills have been passed to make adjustments, particularly in the educational piece of the assessment process.
Yeah, if we have time, I want to come back to that. But I want to talk to Commissioner Hess this morning. Good morning to you.
Good morning.
Commissioner Ruddock was talking about election reform, and in Pennsylvania, that's become a really hot topic, hasn't it?
Yes, there was a directive from the governor, and basically saying that all counties must replace their equipment by 2020, and a lot of counties are doing that sooner, so that they can avoid the the hubbub of the 2020 election, because it's a presidential election.
Yeah.
So in the governor's proposal, budget proposal, he talked about some upfront monies to help pay for that, and funding that those expenses over a number of years. Of course, the Commissioners Association would rather see that happen more upfront, because it's problematic if over a number of years it requires legislative action to unleash those monies. So there are things happening. We are pushing for more of an input from the state, just because the counties need that, and we don't have that from within necessarily. So
within the governor's budget address, we haven't had a chance to talk with you since he put forward his budget wish list, and now in the legislature, the General Assembly is holding the hearings. They started last week in the House, this week in the Senate.
Right.
The county, of course, has great interest, and particularly in human services, I would assume. What was your reaction as a board or as individual commissioners to what the governor put forth?
Well, as we know, I think every single human service is, children and youth, and mental health, substance abuse, domestic violence, all of those. The gap between what's available and where the need is just keeps growing. So I'm not so familiar with what the budget proposals are, but I do know that there are some proposals out there to take mental health services away from the county's oversight, and that's very problematic for us. We have a Drug and Alcohol Commission that serves 3 counties, Armstrong, Indiana, and Clarion, and they have made some enormous strides in mental health and in substance abuse, the problems that we have here in the counties. And there's some significant talk about removing those monies that come to the counties and basically privatizing them. Mm-hmm. So we're working hard on that, and that's a serious concern for us right now.
Yeah, Commissioner Ruddock.
Well, we talked about that item as well in Harrisburg on January 29th, and we are not, the County Commissioners Association is really trying to get the legislature to realize they have to replace the 10% deficit that occurred a number of years ago and have not done so. And so every year we are falling 10% behind the power curve, and it becomes, you accumulate that deficit over a period of time, and we haven't made it up. Everything in the county that we deal with has some impact on human services. And so we are working hard to resurrect that funding support. Commissioner Hess very well spoke about what the issue is. At one time, we did have a concept plan that worked very effectively to allow us to have more impact on the human services budget on mental health. And all of a sudden, there's a plan in place to put programs back together that were carved out at one time. And we are very fearful that is going to have another negative impact on counties of Pennsylvania, particularly Indiana.
Yeah.
So
all of those issues. I want to talk, if we have a little bit of time here, about urban and the construction continues at Windy Ridge, and people looking forward to the coming of all those jobs. And of course, we look at the other issues that urban will bring with it. Housing is one of those things that we talk about, and workforce development. Those two items there seem to have become really big in the whole urban story here in Indiana County. And I know that the county as a board of commissioners, you're looking at that as well.
Well, you must have been reading my mind, because I attended a meeting last week that was hosted basically by our Career Link, the Workforce Investment Board of Indiana County. Kevin Laser did a great job. We had a team of individuals across the growth plan of Indiana County to figure out how we're going to move forward in making sure we have resources in place to help offset some of the losses we've experienced in all factors of employment in Indiana County. We not only are trying to seek employees for the Urban Fulfillment Center, but also for other businesses as well. And so we're trying to kickstart that program. We have, I think, a very good plan in place to work forward with that. We have not heard directly yet from Irvin Outfitters as to exactly what are the skill sets they're looking for, the number of individuals they're looking for specifically in each skill set. But we're hopeful to get that very, very soon so we can get that out into the market and let the people know these are the jobs that are coming up, about 255 as a kickstart. And from that, if we can demonstrate a good faith effort in Indiana County to fill those jobs with qualified individuals, there's about 250 more jobs sitting on the table for another part of that process. So we have an exciting opportunity ahead of us, Todd. We're working very, very hard to move that forward. And in fact, working on a different kind of a concept plan just a little bit with the Workforce Investment Board to try to find a way to capture more connectivity between our municipalities, the schools, employers, and the workforce. And so we're looking at maybe bringing on some individuals to help us as coordinators among the different school districts to work with the superintendents, the school boards, to work with employers, to get individuals more actively engaged in active working experiences, mentorship, internships, and those kind of things. So it's working its way through. A lot of good things are happening, and so a lot of excitement yet.
Yeah, we see ICTC has a very active school-to-work program, and we'd love to see that become a part of all of the other school districts that are not involved with ICTC in terms of their academic programs. That would be a good thing.
You know what? It's a great point that you raised, because that is really an area we want to grow, and the challenge you have in rural communities, Indiana County, rural school districts, Purchase Line, Penns Manor, United, they don't have local businesses to bring easily accessed students into their place of business. And so transportation and location becomes an obstacle we have to try to deal with, and we're working on that.
Yeah, well, that's terrific news. There is a job ahead, isn't there?
Yeah, and it's all hands on deck. And as hard as you're working on all of those items, you still have to consider transportation issues and as you mentioned, housing and all the effects that an increased workforce could have on the community.
If the formula works out well, Indiana County is going to be set up for some very exciting economic times, and that adds to that revenue stream we were talking about earlier.
Absolutely. And Todd, I didn't want to miss out to say that you ask about homes and residential, and at our meeting, the Realtors Association was invited and participated because we feel the attraction for Indiana County is our community. And so with our tourist bureau there, with our realtors there, we have really a package to offer to individuals to at least look at what's available in Indiana County for jobs, find a home, connect, and find a way that we can support them in the place that they're at.
A lot of people are moving to communities because of the community, because of where they want to live in a certain lifestyle. Then they find their job. That may not be what we do, but it does speak to how important community is in all of the aspects of a community, not just your working life.
It is interesting to look at, compare where we were 5 years ago and what our hearts and desires were back then. And now we see some of those things coming true. They bring with them a new set of issues, but we just look at them as challenges and move forward. Thank you both for coming in today.
Thank you, Todd, again for having us.
We appreciate it. It is the voice of Indiana County, WCCS, AM 1160 and 101.1 FM.